At one time, we had the largest mill here in the world, hardwood. We had a lot of hardwood trees. Hills were covered with it. Mowbray and Robinson came in and had the mill up here at Quicksand. Got all of our timber, got rich on it. I came in as superintendent of schools with a lot of children to educate. No roads whatsoever, all that way wagon roads, and you rode horseback. We had 108 one-room schools here.
There's no doubt of it, said Mr. Curtis one day, that one of the greatest factors in success is for a young fellow to learn thrift and learn it in his early stage.
Eleanor Roosevelt, she came up on the train. We've got a special train to bring her up here to dedicate the school building. I called the head man, asked him what it costs to run a special train from Ms. Roosevelt from Lexington up here. Oh, he said, Miss Turner, we can't do that. I said, oh, yes, you can. I said, it's just got to be done for the school children here. And we did. We got the train. We had a little boy by the name of Shafter Watts. He'd walked about a mile and a half to school all the time, or maybe 2 miles. And I never saw him except with a pair of patched overalls on. But they were clean. He always came clean. So I asked him, would he introduce Ms. Roosevelt? He had a strong voice. He said, yes, he would. The Kiwanis Club here wanted to buy him a suit. And I said, no, you buy it when he graduates, but not now. He's going to introduce her just the way he's always come to school. So tears came to her eyes when he came out with that patch on his pants there. So that, I think that's one of the things that started us to help us get some help in Eastern Kentucky.
Today I took a trip which should be unnecessary. I took a trip which in our time should become impossible. For the first time in our history, an America without hunger is a practical prospect. And it just simply must become the urgent business of all men and women of every race and every religion and every region. We have declared unconditional war on poverty. Our objective is total victory.
What do you mean, war on poverty? We've always fought poverty here. We've always had poverty, and always will, I guess.
You have a Kennedy in office who's talking about equal opportunity. Then Johnson get up and say he's waging a war on poverty. From a guy who's really been kind of jerked up by the hair of the head, you know, that's the greatest thing you ever hear the leader say. You know, I owe a lot to it. I think it opened my eyes. You know, I certainly got my eyes open to a lot of things that I wasn't aware of. Things were so damn bad, something had to be done. I felt something had to be done.
The government was telling us to go in and organize these communities. Let the people decide. That was what we were hearing. But when I got to Kentucky, I found that politics was crucially important to every aspect of human behavior and dealings and interaction. There were virtually no jobs in Breathitt County. And think of all the jobs in a school system. You've got cooks, you've got bus drivers, you've got aides of all kinds, you've got administrators, plus your teachers. And in a small rural county, you can be sure of tapping into every family. And I'd never heard of people having so much savage local political power, you know, that just could be felt.
They sent some fellows in here that First thing they want to do is to change the whole thing, you know. They thought they could just change everything. I know one girl came in and she was just raving because they didn't have a bridge up at Barwick. And I said, "Where are you from, honey?" She said, "Alabama." Well, I said, "How would you build a bridge up there at Barwick?" "Oh, it could be done." She's going before the fiscal court. And I said, "Well, all power to you if you can get it done." Of course, they just laughed at her. They want to change the power structure in this county more than anything else. And of course, they didn't get anywhere at all.
Earl Stacy had a little footbridge across Quicksand Creek, and that was how his children walked out every morning when they went out to school. One year, Marie said, "I'm going to close that school down. Tell you what you do, Earl, you walk your kids out on the Evanston Road, and we'll have them picked up in a bus there and driven to Evanston. Walk them out there, Earl." And Earl said, "I'm not walking them."
But taking a school down and won't make me walk my children at first, it just looked like she's going to try to make me do what they want me to do. I just wasn't even do it. I'd have went to jail for I would, and I flat told them I would. And I think I was doing the right thing about it. They went told them. A little old pickup truck and a little camper on it. That's what they hauled them in. But they haul them out here in the bus now. Yeah, when way on above where we come across the bridge, I guess 2 miles on up there last year and picked up children. But they moved out, I think, another this purpose ago now.
Seems like when the schools leave the community, people leave too, don't they?
Yeah. Well, it hurts. Yep, it sure does. It hurts the country.
I saw more and more of the community schools closing down, and they didn't take into any kind of consideration that the people in the rural communities needed a different education than if I'd lived in Detroit. I really think that what happened was what these people in Washington and places were saying, look, if you get this money, you're going to have to spend it the way we want you to spend it. You're going to build these big, elaborate buildings. We're going to fill it full of all the modern teaching techniques that money can buy. Now, you can either put it where it'll serve the most people, and of course, that would be around the urban centers, or you don't get it. I don't think Marie Turner and them fought that ideal. But in fact, they may have nourished that. They probably nourished that ideal. And at that time, they probably thought it was the best thing to do, to get people into the mainstream, was bring them out of the hills and hollers and their little schoolhouses and put them in that kind of setting. They may have honestly thought that, I don't know. But I just think it was all wrong. I think anytime you take a kid out of his community to educate him, that you're doing more to hurt him than you are to help him.
Our school had started here in Barwick. It'd been going on, I guess, about a month. And then they decided they'd close the school. Said they couldn't get a teacher to teach it. So they took the school out. We did protest it. And try to keep it in for our smaller kids up to the 5th grade. And so they'd be bigger and able to stand the trip to Jackson. We helped the kids off and didn't send them. And then we got word then if they didn't send them back to school, that our welfare checks would be cut. And actually that's the only bread and butter people had. They couldn't afford to see that cut, so they put their kids on the bus and sent them to school.
See, I think Marie Turner honestly believed that the way to help her people, as she put them, these are my people, was through this system of consolidated education. So she built this state-of-the-art school, named it the LBJ, I believe, elementary school, wasn't it? And it was a model, an inappropriate model, I thought. Come, you ladies and you gentlemen, and listen to my song. I'll sing it to you right, and it won't take long. I might make you mad, but it mean no harm. It's all about the poor folks on Turner's Farm, and it's hard times in the country down on Turner's Farm. Now, Mrs. Irvin Turner is a fine old dame. She treats all the poor people about the same. If you vote for me, I'll treat you right. You think for yourself, your future won't be bright. And it's hard times in the country down on Turner's Farm. Come, you ladies and you gentlemen, and listen to my song. I'll sing it to you right, and it won't take long. I might make you mad, but it'll be no harm. It's all about the poor folks on Turner's Farm, and it's hard times in the country down on Turner's Farm.
Well, the first time I went in there was in first grade. Let's see. I was scared, and I wasn't used to it, and they put me in his class, and then they moved me out, and and I didn't have no friends, and I got scared.
Where are we now?
LBJ.
Are you going to get off the bus now?
No.
Why not?
He didn't say to you. When I get home, it's dark, and it's quiet. And, it's ready. I'm ready to do my homework, watch TV, and go to sleep. I'm ready to go home and eat.
LBJ was Miss Turner's dream, and I remember her saying to me, I just dreamed about this big school. And then, of course, when we opened, needless to say, it was very, very hectic. Here were kids coming from old, dilapidated buildings with outdoor toilets, and and here they were in this modern, carpeted, air-conditioned place, and a place that you could get lost in.
I decided to put carpet on all the floors and get bedroom slippers. And when they walked in, of course, we had a gymnasium for them to play in the wintertime. And so that was when I thought I'd lost my marbles. And some of them said, what about having a school building that you have to take your shoes off when you walk in? So I got all the mothers and fathers to come in, and I told them, I said, now this is a health project. It's not because I'm trying to take care of the carpet. And any of you that cannot furnish the bedroom slippers, let me know and I'll get them for you. Somebody I know of our organization will get them. I think we bought 15 or 20 for our little fellows that couldn't afford it.
After we built phase 2, we had 1,000 students, more or less, sometimes more than that. And but for an elementary school, personally, I would rather see it kept at a smaller. More doesn't always mean better. But after our first phase, we seemed to get along real well, and I might say during our second year of operation, why Governor Nunn awarded LBJ his first prize of being the most innovative school in Kentucky. So I guess we thought that we needed more of the same.
I know they was going to be a lot fancier when they got them going, but I don't think they was a bit better. They might have looked a lot better, but I don't think they was any better. Not for the kids. Well, my kids, they didn't get the attention they should have had, and they didn't learn as fast in the new school as they did the old one. I might have put money into the education, but I don't think I'd have made the changes that they made, because they could have spent the money more wisely than that, I think. Because I can't figure why that they needed all them big schools close to the towns and stuff like that. They needed big schools in towns. Now, understand me, I'm not not putting nobody down. They needed big schools in the towns, but we needed our little schools in the country too. So they could have spent a little money on our little schools and not went in to the thing of putting all these kids on the highways and keeping them out 10 and 12 hours a day for them to try to get an education.
Breathitt County, the high school dropout rate between the ages of 16 and 19 is 38.5%. The percentage of the population over 25 with less than an 8th grade education is almost 50%, 48.1%. We used the 1980 census data to look at West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. The average dropout rate in those 4 states was only 18.9%. So Breathitt County's 38.5% is among the highest. If one has high dropout rates from schools, then the school system is not meeting the needs of the community, and people are voting with their feet. They're dropping out because they see little of value, little of opportunity in the school system. One of the greatest needs of the mountains is leadership. And the education system needs to be focusing on training the next generation of leaders from within the region. That means training students to be creative, training students to think for themselves, training students to understand the democratic system, training students to be able to communicate much more effectively, to use the native talents that exist, I think, within the region for much more effective community change, to be responsible citizens in the community. We frequently have assumed that the major emphasis for education in Appalachia ought to be only vocational education. And that places tremendous limits upon the opportunities of young people, especially when those jobs aren't there to begin with.
The Mayo State Vocational School in Paintsville is a federally assisted institution which provides training for over 3,000 of the hardcore unemployed in this region. Training is offered in a variety of occupations, including service station attendants, draftsmen, clerk stenographers, and beauticians.
You had a few people in the system that they thought should have their minds developed more. And then you had the other class of people there who were from the kind of lower rung of the ladder, the social ladder. And the way to get out of poverty was to be a beautician. All the kids that went to machine shop in the vocational schools. Now, they may be, like Prairie County, there may be 3 or 4 machine shops now, but they, it's all mine-related. I doubt whether that many. Now, how many machinists could Prairie County handle, really? I think we'd be better off to turn it over to the apprenticeship programs of the unions and industry. If they need them, let them train them. If they got jobs for them, let them train them. Not spend all this taxpayers' money for jobs that don't exist, especially in the area where you live. I think, that they should be able to make a living here. That's what we educate them for here. That's why we pay taxes here. And that's where they should live, if they want to live here. A job should be here for those kids when they get big enough to work. A good job, not punching, making hamburgers or punching a cash register.
The use of X-rays revolutionized medical and surgical techniques and provided new insights into the structure of the atom. For many years, X-rays were called Roentgen rays in his honor.
They spend 3 hours in their home high school, or their parent high school, and then they are transported by bus up here, and then they spend 3 hours here at the vocational school. We have several that are interested in going into a nursing field. We have one who's interested in becoming an airline stewardess. Some wants to go the practical nursing route and then go on into the RN program as they earn some money to help them in their education. And then some will probably get married and live happily ever after.
How did I tell you a while ago that concrete was sold? Cubic yard. The cubic yard. Anytime you work with 3 dimensions, you get cubes. And you're working with 3 dimensions here. Length, width, and thickness. Well, everybody that's involved in the educational process needs to understand that you got to have both. You can't a skill without the academic background or vice versa, you just, it's not very good. You're limited. You're too limited in what kind of a citizen you're going to be and how you're going to function in your community and so on.
So you need the academics.
Definitely, definitely. Scream for it. Yes, we need that very bad. When you have students that have advanced this far in the system and then have problems that some of them have, you wonder, you know, what the problem really is, you know, and if there's any hope for straightening it out in the future. See, I'm not qualified to teach academics. I'm qualified to teach character skills. That's what I do. So really, I would be very limited in what I could teach them in the academic skills, such as this 6th grade math here that we're going through.
I'd like to have them in there and say, now look, what are y'all thinking about today? What do you think we could really do today to learn something? They're going to have to learn how to read and write, you know, and that kind of stuff. We could learn that, though. You know, we could do that in groups. Look, if you know how to read, get over here. You two sit together. Ones that can't read and one that can read. Get together here. Let him learn you. But don't separate the kids. You know, let them all congregate together and learn from each other. You'd be surprised what a difference that'd make. Talk about history. Talk about literature. Talk about English. And get it out in the open and really get down and get it. And, you know, that's where the creative work don't take place. You have to have that, you know, that discussion, that openness, that talk, you know, talk about stuff. Not just say read it and I'll give you a quiz on it. And if you don't pass it, I'll flunk you for the year. I don't think it's such thing as failing in school. I think the only thing that's failed in school is the school itself. I don't think kids really fail in school. I think the teachers failed, the administrators failed, and the states failed, and the federal government's failed in education, not the people. Of course, they're the one punished the most part.
They just don't take the time to learn nothing. See, they only got a certain couple youngsters that learn something. So when I went to school, they put me in the back. They wouldn't let me do nothing. They wouldn't even learn. You know, I was in the 8th grade before I learned how to write my name. That's true. You next to my brother-in-law, he was in the same room. He didn't know how to write his name either. The only reason he knew how to write it because we had the same name, first name, Charles and Charles. That's the only way we learned. But that made me feel awful, buddy. It made me feel like I didn't exist, buddy. That's how I felt. And everybody I went to school with in this holler, I went to school with every boy up in here, and they half of them some of them can't even write their name right now. You don't know what you miss out on when you don't get your education. Because I missed out on a lot of it. And I am going to try to get my GED and stuff right now. But I got to learn my math and stuff. See, I didn't learn math in school. See, they didn't teach me math hardly. They wouldn't take the time. They in a hurry, you know. They always got another kid to go to or something. I expect my kid to go off from here. I expect to go somewhere and get my kid a good education. I don't want to be like me. I'm not dumb, but I like to learn things that other people's learned. Like my dad, I didn't know nothing. I was 24 years old before I got my driver's license because I couldn't read and write. Where that school I went to is politics. All it is politics.
I was 24 when I got my license. But that don't mean I ain't been driving for about 20 years.
We have a right to expect a job, to provide food for our family, a roof over their head, clothes for their bodies, an opportunity to have our children educated, and the right to worship God according to the dictates of our own conscience. Poverty not only strikes at the needs of the body, it attacks the spirit and it undermines human dignity. Help us to open wide the doors of opportunity, and we invite all to come in, for when we have done this, it will one day be said of America that she was a burning and shining light in man's journey on earth.
20 years after the War on Poverty, there is no mandate to fulfill the promise of 1964. 20 years later, we are willing to accept the existence of a permanent two-tiered society. One with the skills and the freedom to succeed in the post-industrial world, the other lacking the resources and the opportunity to negotiate the new order. 20 years later, we are still raising a generation of mountain youth who have little hope for employment, little control over their lives, and little reason to think that anyone cares. 20 years later, we Americans find ourselves embracing an economics which has no room for morality, community, or basic human needs. There's a quote in the Bible that says, "The mountains shall yield peace for the people, and the hills justice." We shall see.
Robert Kennedy visit here. He come and visits the one-room school here with the kids. I was in the tour led him tomorrow with. He said all he could say was just a poverty-stricken area. That's all he said. We took him down across the swinging bridge, across the river. The county said that they didn't see why I wanted to bring him out like that. I said he's always just seen the front yard. I thought I'd show him the back. Then he could see out in the rural area what was happening too. And that they could reach out, but then, you know, he was killed. I've been around, I've seen it. And I know my eyes didn't fail me. But our nation is in a square stage, I think.